Tuesday afternoon. He comes on at 1 p.m. on Tuesdays and Wednesdays at 10 a.m. I come in and we're doing books through the Bible. We're studying all the way through the Bible. And this is something that locals, like this is a local television broadcast. And if you're watching on Star News and you appreciate what does the Bible say, then you can tell people to get in Google, right? You open up your internet and Google Johnny Robertson YouTube, and all of this will come up. This is the YouTube channel where you can watch. Look at this. You're watching right now in Martinsville. And what you can do is you can let people know about YouTube, Johnny Robertson. They'll get to see what does the Bible say. And they'll see the banner. They'll see my dad's picture. They'll see this watch live icon. And so this is what I want to do really quick. Y'all, this morning we are starting a new class. You and I are going to go through the book of Judges together. And so we just finished Joshua. We did a small special series doing an overview of the law of Moses. That's the first 5 books of the Old Testament. And now we're hitting the book of Judges. But I want to show you something really quickly. If you go to the YouTube, Johnny Robertson, YouTube, what does the Bible say? You'll get the playlists, and this is what you can do. Dad is 3 classes into the book of Hebrews. You find the playlist, special class on the law of Moses, book of Joshua, 13 lessons, book of Exodus, 12 lessons, life of Christ. You keep going, what do we have here? Book of Luke, book of Genesis. We want you to be informed, right? We want you to be getting as much Bible information as you can. A lot of people are not even meeting in their buildings. They're not assembling together. And then a lot of people who do assemble, you're not getting that much teaching where you go. And so we are, in fact, working overtime to get this information out to you because we want you to be as edified as you possibly can. And the reason that we do this, y'all, we're not doing this just so that you can have more head knowledge, so that I can have more head knowledge. We want to do this so that we are prepared to talk to people about the truth so that we can narrow down division, right? We don't want so much division in the religious community. And we want to be able to do an effective job convincing people about the fact that God exists, that we should be following the Bible. We want to be able to knock out a lot of the excuses that they have as to why they don't follow God. So this is Johnny Robertson YouTube. And then let's do this really quick. This is my contact info. If you want to get together and have Bible conversation outside of these television broadcasts and the YouTube videos, my phone number is 276-806-3641. I'm supposed to be getting together with somebody from the Chatham area pretty soon. You contact me. You have something you want to talk about, Bible related, we can get together face-to-face in person, 276-806-3641. My email is calebgrobertson@gmail.com. And if you email me, we will put you on the informer list every Sunday morning. You will get this page-and-a-half Bible article in your email inbox. Again, this is done just to give you more edification, trying to do our part to encourage people. Last Sunday was Unprepared for Romans, No Critical Thinking. People do not want to get in deep, but you're going to have to do it, which means you're going to either have to have, be the early bird that gets the worm, or you're going to have midnight oil to really be cranking out this type of study. And we invite you to the Danville Church of Christ, where we're still doing our series, Studying Sin Seriously. Okay, this class is designed to help you better know your Bible, as we say, without moving across America. But if you are so inclined, you're somewhere and you're saying the church is dead out here, they don't want to do evangelism, they also don't want to teach sound doctrine, 2 Chronicles 11:14 and 2 Chronicles 15:9 is biblical precedent for you to move where the faithful people are. So if you say, I want to live in Martinsville or Danville and do work with these brethren, there's your Bible example. Hey, have at it. Prep you for evangelism. We want to be talking to people about the truth. This is not just to get smarter. This is so we can help people. Get experience in your own backyard. You should be door knocking on your own. And of course, these are lessons prepared by individuals who actually are doing evangelism. We are trying to talk to people all over the place. And let's say this really quick. Opportunity for evangelism is everywhere. People just aren't looking for it. So let's talk about this. You go on Facebook, there's trash all over Facebook, but that's not the point. You go on Facebook and you look at the marketplace, right? You look at the marketplace, you buy something, you know what you could do? You're going to see that person for like 5 minutes. Cash, get your stuff, you're going to go. It is so easy for you to take an extra copy. I'm saying take a copy of the book Muscle and a Shovel by Michael Shank. Fantastic evangelistic tool. You're about to make an exchange. You're about to buy something from somebody in town that you maybe won't ever see again. Just give them a book. Ask them, are you religious? If they say yes or no. If someone says no to me, are you religious? No. I'm going to say, is it because the religious community is so confusing and you don't even know where to begin? More times than not, they say, yeah. They say it's a mess. I say, this book spotlights the mess and then gives the answers. It's so easy. Right? You write your phone number down on the inside flap of Muscle and a Shovel. If they read it and they like it, they want to talk to you, they have your phone number. The evangelistic opportunities all over the place. We're just not looking for them. Excuse me. That's a very easy way to do it. Okay. Now here we go. We're about to get into it. Studying Sin seriously. These are the books that I recommend for your Old Testament study. We're going to be in the Old Testament for a while. Evenings with the Bible, Volume 1, Volume 2. Old Testament Studies by Isaac Garrett. You can find those on Amazon. Pretty good deal on them. You can also get Volume 3, which is New Testament Studies. Okay. Are you ready to go? This is the book of Judges. Hopefully you have, let's show like we always do. I have a Bible program with me, behind me. This is a King James Bible program, just so that you know I'm not making stuff up. If you need to call me out on something, we have it ready to go. If you want to ask a question, this is a King James Bible program. It's ready to go. But I would encourage you to have your Bible out. You know, if you're sitting at a desk, whatever, get your Bible out so that you can build familiarity with your Bible. I've said this before. I'm just going to say it to you real quick. I see a lot of guys, y'all. See a lot of guys. I just can't do it. I think that you would be better off the other way. I see a lot of guys using a Bible on their phone. Your battery will die, and you also cannot remember page placement in your phone. This is what I'm saying. You get your book of Judges out, you start studying it, you are going to know. If you can't, you say, well, I'm not too good with chapters and scriptures. Where those numbers are, I have a hard time. One more thing for your memory bank, and that is, what side of the page is it going to be on? I'm telling you that when numbers fail me, I almost always know what side of the page it's going to be on. And that's how I do it. A lot of people would say about me and Dad, they would say, boy, y'all got that stuff memorized. I just don't know how you do it. We are basically creating layers of memory for ourselves. Chapter, verse, keywords, right? If I can't find out what the whole thing says, I know what a word will be in there, and then page placement. Trying to help you out here. These are tips on how to do it. I mean, some of y'all are going to fight me and say, well, I don't see a problem with using the Bible on my phone. It's not like I said it was sinful. I'm saying it's not good for your memory. You're not getting page placement. That's just one thing that will help you, and your battery can die. Okay. I'm going to tell you up front, why don't people study Judges? And really the Old Testament for that matter. So let's talk about this. One of the biggest problems that people have with their Bible study is that they just don't read their Bible. I would encourage you, as we start reading the book of Judges, and you've known for weeks that this class was coming, so hopefully people who are serious about these classes, you've already read the book of Judges, right? You've probably had 4 weeks, 5 weeks to get ready for this. So you should have read the book of Judges multiple times, right? They just don't read. And you could start out, and here's the thing too. I say have your Bible ready to go. Have your notepad ready to go. We have 2 hours. You and I have 2 hours to talk about Judges. Get your notes. This is a yellow notepad. Get your notes. Organize on your notepad. Get them how you want them. Then cleanly put them in your wide margin King James Bible. So here's what I'm saying. You say, well, Caleb, I was reading through the book of Judges, and I found something that was a little bit confusing to me. So do you know what I would say to that? Skip it. Keep reading the book. Skip that one thing. And when you come up to something else, make a note of it. You can write it down. But you come up to something else, maybe a chapter or two later, you say, that was a little bit confusing to me. Just skip it. Read your text, y'all. Familiarize yourself with the text. That is one of the biggest things you can do for yourself, is so that you know where things are, you know what the context is, and then we can go backwards and we can start really digging in, right? But you can't study if you haven't read first. If you don't know what's going to be in there, you can't start studying it. You have to read, and then you get to study. It's like people say, you got to walk. What is it? You got to crawl before you can walk. I'll say this. People don't do their Bible study that way. They don't read the book first, what they do is they get a commentary out. I appreciate the people who have written commentaries. I appreciate the people who've written commentaries. That's their contribution. I appreciate that. But I will say this, the thoughts and opinions are so broad in commentaries, I would encourage you to read the book first. And that is my opinion. I would encourage you to read the book first, then start checking out your commentaries. And I think that people start looking at commentaries before they've read the book, and what they do is they spend more time reading these commentaries, and now they feel exhausted. Right? You've consulted with however many commentaries about the book of Judges, you don't even want to read the book of Judges. See what I'm saying? And then you get all these different ideas in them, and then you start getting confused about, well, this is what the commentators say, and this one says this, and this one says that. You don't even know what's in the book yet. I would encourage you to read your book first, then start looking at commentaries. And this is a big thing. It's not wrong to argue. It's not wrong to have conflicting views. We have to talk about these things, but we're going to talk about this today in today's class. They get confused on the timeline. Remember when we started doing Joshua, the way that we did this, we said, we want you to learn to layer your Bible. A lot of people don't read their Bible because they don't know what's going on. They don't know where they are in the timeline. They don't know who these people are. But I say if you just get a base understanding of how this is working, we said Exodus 19, it's about the second month coming out of the land of Egypt. Then you get to Numbers chapter 1. Let's do this. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it was so easy. You get to Numbers chapter 1, verse number 1. It says, the Lord spake unto Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tabernacle of the congregation the first day of the second month in the second year. Now you're only 2 years into it, remember? So we said people will read Exodus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and they'll think like there's all this spanning of time when in fact they're overlapping with each other. Well, people are going to get confused when they come to Judges. They're going to start reading Judges 1 and 2. They're going to say, well, this is the end of Joshua. And you're going to keep reading the book, and then you're going to see some more things. You're going to say, well, I just don't know about this. This, y'all, is not that difficult. I think we can discuss this, and I'm saying we are going to talk about the timeline today just so that we can do this. I want to get out of your way so that we don't have to talk about it again. Do you know what I'm saying? Very seldom will I do a class where basically someone might already be saying, I hope we get to this quick. I am not concerned about that type of stuff. I want to get the real meat from the book, what God intends us to get out of the book, what I think God would have us focus on. But I'm going to get this timeline out of the way because I know that it's going to be an argued topic. I want to get that out of the way so that we can really get into the book and study the book for what it is. And then I will say this too. You find things that are a little bit confusing. People don't put too much effort into it. And I really hope, y'all, that you don't make this statement. I've heard, you're in a congregation, and there's some men in the congregation that you basically think they are educated fellows, but they have some disagreement amongst themselves. I would hope that you don't say, well, if they can't figure it out, then I'm never going to figure it out. Okay. That's a point. Now, let's say this. Don't say that. Don't look at people who are studying and say, if they can't figure it out, then I can't figure it out. What you could look at is say, maybe that's not what we should really be focusing on. You see two guys in the congregation that are arguing about that. Maybe that's not even what we're supposed to be looking at. So, I don't know what this would be like. I just got a text. So, if you're someone who exercises, like, you ride a bike, you run on a treadmill, you run outside, whatever. Let's say your exercise is going to last 90 minutes. You can listen to the entire book of Judges on audio on YouTube, and it'll take you 90 minutes. You might have to basically find the exact one, but there is a video out on YouTube where you can listen to an audio reading of the book of Judges and only take 90 minutes. See, that's another point. It is very easy to find ways to get Bible study into your daily routine, right? Somebody says, I don't have time to read the book of Judges. Fine. Listen to the book of Judges on your commute, right? Listen to the book of Judges while you're exercising. Do something, y'all. We can just continuously say, well, I don't have the time and I can't blah, blah, blah. Instead of constantly saying that till we die, let's reorganize our time. and let's find ways to do it. Okay, here's where we are. Why people don't study Judges or anything in the Old Testament. Number one, they start out with their commentaries, and then they spend so much time on their commentaries that they get worn out. I don't even feel like studying Judges anymore. Well, then they look at some timeline facts, and then they're going to start getting confused, and then they're going to find things that they don't understand. Someone's going to call it a discrepancy, and they just don't put too much effort into it. Now, the thing that I say is you do not have to have a PhD, but you do have to be consistent. You have to be persistent. You're going to have to keep reading these things. And I will tell you this, you might spend a bunch of time reading in Judges. That's why I said skip it. You spend a bunch of time reading in Judges, and you might actually find the answer you're looking for in a whole other book. You just haven't gotten there yet. You know, we have to spend a lot of time reading and really collecting the information so that we can start actually formulating ideas. Now, I want to say this too as we get going. Two things we need to remember in this class. My job is not to talk about the things that you all already know. So, just like I said about the book of Joshua, I said we're going to do a study in the book of Joshua, and somebody said, okay, chapter 6 and 7, we're going to look at Jericho. Y'all thought I was going to open up with Jericho. No, everybody knows about Jericho, so we didn't really spend too much time on that. Everybody knows about Jericho. So we're going to go into this class, and all y'all are going to be geared up, ready to hear about Samson. Samson and his hair, Samson and Delilah, all kinds of stuff like that. And we will spend time on Samson, but I'm saying, y'all, there's a lot more happening in this book than just Samson and Gideon. So now that we're actually talking about that, do you know, look, there are people out there, and some of y'all are not like this. You're basically saying, no, Caleb, we want the whole book. We want everything. Okay, great. But sometimes there are people who are watching this broadcast and they just want to jump straight to Gideon. They want to jump straight to Samson. So, do you know that really, these 2 points, these two people, y'all, that is like, I'm talking about little kid Sunday school. If you're just itching to get into Judges so we can run straight to Samson, that's what, it's not bad. I appreciate Sunday school teachers getting these kids ready to hear these things. That's a big thing. These kids get to grow up knowing the text, and then when they become, where their mind is actually geared and ready to go, they get to start talking about the bigger things. There's more to Judges than just these two things, okay? We're not just going to talk about the hot points. We're going to talk about things, and let's say this too, y'all. My job really is to challenge you. We come into this class and we start talking about things, and you're going to sit, however you're sitting to watch this class, you're going to say, I don't know about that. Well, that's the whole purpose of this class. You need to be challenged. We want to grow. This class is not just for me to come in and reaffirm things that you already believe in. We want to grow and you want to be challenged. Okay, don't forget this either. This is what we say. Tidbits are neat. Application is meat. I will tell you this. The first half of our class this morning is going to be tidbits. If you were watching my dad's class yesterday, he and I talked about it, and he said there was a couple points in there. He said I had to get kind of technical, and for fear of basically you don't like to get too technical because that's when some people say, well, I don't know how I'm going to use this. We don't put information out there unless we think you can use it. So if you're sitting home saying, I don't know how I'm going to use this. Look, we think this is valuable information that you can use. You just have to find where you're going to use it. First class is going to be on tidbits. The second half, y'all, is going to be big time application. Tidbits are neat, application is meat. What does that mean? Tidbits usually are the things that people argue about, but they don't really change that much, whereas the application is we're going to see these aspects or teachings from the New Testament, and we're going to see them painted out in front of us through the Old Testament, right? The New Testament gives us these principles. The Old Testament gives us a picture where we get to see it actually acted out. We did a lesson in Danville with the brethren on a Sunday morning. The New Testament says don't be self-willed. Well, we go back to the Old Testament, we find all these people who were not self-willed. See? So we're going to do application this morning where we're going to take a New Testament principle and we're going to see it painted out, very detailed for us in the book of Judges. And I think it's going to be fantastic. Okay. Here is, you have your notepad ready. I'm saying, y'all, you can pause this class. If you're watching on Star News, you may not be able to pause it. If you're watching on YouTube, you can pause this class. You can get these notes. I'm not going to go, I don't think, too quickly. But you want to get this. We're going to get it out of the way. And then we're going to really start diving in, okay? There are 3 passages that you're going to have to know to be involved in this conversation. Judges 11:26, Acts 13:20, and 1 Kings 6:1. And you'll notice on the screen that none of those numbers match up. So let's look at them. In Judges 11:26, while Israel dwelt in Heshbon and her towns, and all cities that belong to the coast of Arnon 300 years. Why therefore did you not recover them within that time? Now let's look at this. Judges 11:26. He is quoting from Numbers 21. Okay? He says, when Israel took Heshbon. Now, let me take a moment. In Numbers 21, the Israelites take Heshbon. Now this is going to be, it says beyond Jordan. These are going to be some of those towns beyond Jordan on the east side. 300 years from Numbers 21 to Judges 11, or really Judges 10, and when he begins judging in chapter 11. Well, then you're going to look at Acts 13:20, and really, let's do this. Let's go to Acts 13, verse number 19. It says, and when he had destroyed 7 nations in the land of Canaan, he divided their land to them by lot. And after that he gave unto them judges about the space of 450 years until Samuel the prophet. Okay. Judges 11, it says from the taking of Heshbon till his time in Judges chapter 10, or the beginning of chapter 11, he says it's been 300 years. So there's your time frame, right? If you're basically looking at the conquest of Joshua, the death of Moses, and where they're going to be in the book of Judges, you are looking at a time window of 300 years. Well, you say, okay, I got that. Judges 11, from the time that they took Heshbon in Numbers 21, that's 300 years. Okay. Well, now we're looking at what Paul says in Acts 13, verses 19 and 20. He gave unto them judges about the space of 450 years until Samuel the prophet. Okay, we said we had another one. 1 Kings 6:1. It came to pass in the 480th year after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziph, which is the 2nd month, that began to build the house of the Lord. So here's what you have. In the 4th year, y'all, you're saying this is already too detailed. Look, I don't want to go fast. I want to knock this out so that we don't have anybody clamoring for it, right? They say, we want the timeline. You want to argue with somebody. And you know I'm fine with arguments and debates. That's fine. But I'm going to make a point as we conclude this, as we make our way. These are the things you're going to have to put, you're going to have to make them work. Now I want to paint this in a different picture. I'm saying I want to get this out of the way. I don't want to sound like negative about it. I think this is great Bible study. I think it's interesting. A second way that you can look at it, I'm basically trying to fix people who are fighting about it in the congregation, but here's another way that you need this. You basically take someone who is a skeptic of the Bible, and you're going to try to talk to them about they're a skeptic, so they don't even go to church on Sunday. And you're going to say to them, you should be following the Bible. The second greatest commandment is love your neighbor as yourself. This is a fantastic starting point. And the Bible gives us all these moral principles. And they're going to say back to you, okay, you want me to follow the Bible? And you say, yeah, you need to follow the Bible. And they're going to say back to you, how can I follow a Bible that doesn't even get its timeline right? Judges 11 says 300 years. Acts 13:20 says 450 years. 1 Kings 6:1 says 480 years. This is what I would ask them. Okay. You remember how you opened up on why they ought to follow the Bible? You don't have to let them get in the driver's seat. You're talking to a skeptic and you say, you should be following the Bible. The moral principles that are inside the Bible, be good to your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. Don't return evil for evil, right? And it's not just don't return evil for evil. You return good for evil. And you pray for your enemies, Matthew 5:44. And then the skeptic says, well, the Bible can't even get its timeline right. 300 years, 450 years, 480 years. Now, this is what I would do. I would tell them, I understand what you're saying. I hear your question. But I would ask them, what does that have to do with what I just said? I brought up the fantastic moral principles of the Bible, and you want to now talk about the timeline of Judges because you think it doesn't fit. Right? don't let them get in the driver's seat. You tell them, when you say the Bible is filled with moral principles and they're fantastic, and then they say, well, I don't know if I can trust the Bible, they can't get their timeline. Let's talk with that after you explain to me, skeptic, why you don't like the moral principles of the New Testament. See what I'm saying? Don't let them take over, but you can have that train of thought where you put them back on the spot, and when they're done, then we can say maybe now, maybe later. Let's address this. Okay, let's do this. Are you ready? Let's deal with Judges 11:26 first. From the time that they took Heshbon, Numbers 21, till Judges 11, he says was 300 years. Now, I will tell you this. I want to make another point. There are some people, let's not be unrealistic. There are some people who just want to teach so they can show out. There are some of those people, they want people to be impressed with their knowledge. Halfway, let's do it this way. Halfway, I appreciate them putting out the information, right? I wish that there wasn't if there is a hidden agenda, I wish it wasn't there. And the thing about hidden agendas, you don't always know that they're there, God knows. But this is another point too. You shouldn't just say anybody who's trying has a hidden agenda. But look at Philippians 1. He says, many brethren in the Lord, verse number 14 of Philippians 1, waxing confident by my bonds, are much more bold to speak the word without fear. Some indeed preach Christ of envy and strife, some also of goodwill. The one preached Christ of contention, not sincerely, supposing to add affliction to my bonds, but the other of love, knowing that I am set for the defense of the gospel. He says, what then? Notwithstanding, every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is preached, and therein I do rejoice, yea, and will rejoice. So there are some people who basically just say they're teaching so they can get the credit, and they can look good. Well, Paul would say, at least they're teaching the truth. So I'm going to tell you, the information I'm about to give you is not original with me. This is a book. You can check this book out on Amazon. I don't remember how much it was. It's not going to be overly expensive. This is by a man named Philip Morrow, and it's called The Wonders of Bible Chronology. You get this book, he is going to cite a few individuals on how he put these charts together. You and I are not about to study these charts, but I'm telling you this is where you can find it. So I'm saying to you right now, I'm not really trying to have you watch this broadcast and we put it out and you say, boy, that Caleb, he really mapped out that timeline, and that dude. No. I'm going to tell you where I got it. I think of all the different things that I looked at, I think that Philip Morrow did the best job, and it's just a chart of numbers, right? So let's do it. We have 3 things to work with. Please don't let me lose you, right? Because we're going to get to the second half of this show, and it's going to be fantastic. We're going to really talk about application in the second half of this show, but I'm giving you this really quickly so that you can talk to skeptics. You don't let them in the driver's seat, but you know how to answer their stuff. And you're able to talk with people who you basically have respect for in the congregation. You think they're good Bible students, but they're arguing about this stuff. I think that Philip Morrow did the best job in his book. Show it again. The Wonders of Bible Chronology. This is what we're working with. Judges 11:26, you got to get 300 years. Acts 13:20, you got to get 450 years. And 1 Kings 6:20, you got to get 480 years. Now, those are all different numbers, but how are you going to make them all work together? Here we go. In Numbers 21:25, this is the year before they're actually going to start moving in. And I mean Joshua moving into Canaan to take the land. You look at Joshua 14:10, he's going to say 40 years in the wilderness. And then he's going to say he says 40 years in the wilderness, now I'm 85, but they're still not done yet. He says now, they had their 40 years wandering, and now he also started out as 40 years old when it started. Take 40 years to wander, he's 80 years old, and the conquest is almost done. He says, I'm 85. Here's our numbers. 8 years under Cushan, Judges 3:8. This is where I say you can pause the broadcast and you can get all these numbers if you want. 40 years rest with Othniel, 18 years under Eglon, Judges 3:14. 80 years rest under Ehud, 20 years rest under 20 years affliction under Jabin, or with Jabin. 40 years rest with Barak, 7 years under Midian, 40 years rest with Gideon, 3-year window with Abimelech. That's what's going to be called a usurpation. And then 23 years with Tola. Now, when you put all those together, you get 286 years. And we say, well, that's not even what Judges 11:26 says. So here's what you do. You look at their conquest, Numbers 21, you're saying from Heshbon till Judges 11. So you're taking the year before the conquest, Numbers 21, 25, when they take Heshbon, you're going to be looking at Joshua 14, about 6 years for their conquest. Now, here's my question. Right? You're going to want to have discussion about this, and that's fine. Did they take the land and immediately, they took the land, they immediately went into all this turmoil and the judges shoot up? Or is it the case that there's going to be a window of time before the judges start operating? And this is how Philip Marr would answer it. I think it's the best way to answer it. Judges 11:26 says there were 300 years. Well, when you take up all the markers that we have, you basically have a 14-year gap from 286 to get 300. So why would we not say there's a 14-year window between the dividing of the land and when they actually started being oppressed in Judges chapter 3? Could they have not come into the land, had a time of rest, right? They're getting situated, and once they're situated, we now begin to have problems. What does that mean? You're going to be having your battles with Mesopotamia. A judge is going to arise. They're going to go back into turmoil. Another judge is going to arise. Could there not have been a 15-year or 14-year window where they're just getting settled? Now that's an option, right? Again, I say you can rewind, you can pause, you can look at all these notes. Here are the scriptural references with it. I told you, this is not original with me. There's a lot of argument about this, but I do think that this book, Wonders of Bible Chronology, I think he did the best job. So here's where we get our 300. We take the time frames that we do have, the year before the conquest, the actual conquest, and then the time frame up to Judges 11, where he says it's been 300 years. Add all those up, you have 286 years. You say, well, we're 14 years short. I'm asking the question, could it not be possible that when they have taken the land to when the judges start having to judge the way that they do in the book of Judges, could there not be a 14-year window? Okay, now that's point number one for Judges 11:26. Now let's do this. You say, well, what about Paul's 450 years? Okay, let's do this. There's going to be a big note that has to be made when you look at Acts 13. This is where you pause. This is where you get your notepad out, where you write this stuff down. In Acts 13, number 19, and then verse number 20, you have the conquest, and then it says, and he gave them judges for the space of 450 years. There's going to be a very, very key note in those verses. So here's what you do. 6 years for the conquest, Joshua 14:10. You put your 14-year interval that we got from our last slide, right, in order to make it actually be not just, what was it? Let's zoom out. Not just 286, you get your 14-year interval to make it 300. Well, now you have to include the 14-year interval in this chart. 8 years under Cushan, 40 years with Othniel, 18 years with Eglon, 80 years with Ehud, 20 years Jabin, 40 years rest with Barak, 7 years under Midian, 40 years with Gideon, 3 years with Abimelech, 23 years with Tola, 22 years under Amon, 18 years to Jephthah, 6 years to Isban, 7 years to Elon, 10 years to Abdon, 8 years under the Philistines, 40 years servitude, and then 40 years with Elon. You put them together, let's do this. Zoom out. In 50 years. Now that's Acts 13:20. So do you know, I want to show you something as to why somebody would have a problem with this, and this is the thing that they do. This is why they won't like that chart. They're going to look at and they're going to say, well, Caleb, if you do all of the judges, and remember y'all, Samuel is a judge. If you do all of the judges, then you're not going to have 450 years. And you're going to say to me, well, you stopped short with Eli. No, I actually did what Paul said in Acts 13:20. After that, he gave unto them judges about the space of 450 years until Samuel the prophet. So if you mark the beginning of their time of judges, and you go up until Samuel, you will get 450 if you follow the way he says in Acts 13:20. If you make your stopping point until Samuel the prophet, then you get 450 years. I know, right now you're saying, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. Well, I already told you, you might possibly run into a skeptic who says, the timeline of the book of Judges is a mess. And you're going to get to talk with them about this if you make notes. Boy, I'm telling you, nobody's going to remember this. So what you're going to have to do is you are going to have to pause the video, you're going to have to write it down, and then somewhere in like the back of your Bible, you'll probably have all these blank pages. You can write this in there. You can have the charts in the back of your Bible. Number one, I said don't let them get in the driver's seat just because they asked that question. But if you want to take time to deal with it, you can. Now here's the 450 years. Well, now we need to get 1 Kings 6:1, and we need to see how those years work out. You say, what about the 480 years from 1 Kings 6:1? This is what you do. Let's read 1 Kings 6:1 again, because we do have to pay attention to what all is mentioned. It came to pass in the 480th year, after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the second month, that it began to build the house of the Lord. So what's your markers? The Exodus, the 4th year of Solomon's reign, and so this is what you're going to do. You're going to have the 40 years wandering in the wilderness. You're going to have 450 years till Samuel, Acts 13:20. You're going to have 20 years with Samuel, 1 Samuel 7:2. You're going to have 40 years with Saul, Acts 13:21. A lot of people would not know that about Saul. If you try to look at the actual books, 1 Samuel, you're going to have a hard time figuring all that out, but it's clearly stated in Acts 13:21 that he reigned 40 years with Saul. 40 years with David, 1 Kings 2:11, and then 4 years into King Saul. That's 594. And you say, we're looking for 480. And if we do it that way, you get 594. Y'all, this is one of those things that they're going to be talking about. I just want to get this out of the way with you so that you can have it for your notes, and then you and I get to really study Judges, okay? Let's look at this. How are we going to get 480, I'm sorry. How are we going to get 480 when this is going to say 594? And I know I need to go in here really quickly. Okay. Make just a quick adjustments to my notes. Fix our slide. Okay. We add all these up, and you get 594. Now let's do this. As you do your notes and you read through your book of Judges, y'all, you document this down, you get it neat and you get it organized. This is what you're going to find. This is a way to do it, y'all, and this is a way to make all the numbers make sense together. Whether it's 300, 450, or what we're about to see, okay? You get 8 years under Cushan, and really what Philip Morrow would suggest is you take the time frames of when they are oppressed and you add those up, and this is what we have here. 8 years under the Mesopotamian king Cushan, 18 years under Eglon, 20 years under Jabin, 7 years under Midian, 3 years Abimelech, 18 years under the Amorites, and 40 years under the Philistines, 114 years. 594 minus 114, you get 480 years. Now, you can get this book and you can check it out. But this is what I would like to say. You do all of that, and this might be messy. I hope it's not. And it might be confusing to you. I hope it's not. But I would say this. It's an example of 1 Corinthians 8, 1 and 2. If any man thinks that he knows anything, he knoweth nothing, yet as he ought to know. There's going to be, let's say this, there's going to be so much information that you're going to have to go through. There's so much information to accumulate. We operate really and honestly on such a short time I'm saying in our life, to accumulate the information, then start sifting through the information to see that we need. I would hope that we don't basically disqualify people from the Bible conversation because they don't have Judges mapped out. I'm saying as far as their timeline goes. You get what I'm saying? You can have the timeline of Judges mapped out down to just all kinds of nth degree. And I see some people trying to put like years on it. I don't think that they can really go that far. But I would say this. You can get the timeline going and you can still miss the message of the book of Judges. And that's what we're going to be doing in our second half of our show. Do you get what I'm saying? And then here's a whole nother wrench that somebody could throw into it. Whole nother thing that could go into this is the next question about the timeline. Someone's going to say, in Acts 13:20, they're going to say it's 450 years, but didn't Israel always have judges? And in a sense, I would have to say yes, they did. Look at Acts 18. It says this is the time frame where Moses was with his father-in-law. Moses' father-in-law sees that he is basically the one-man judge over all these people. And his father-in-law Jethro says, that's not good. He says, thou wilt surely wear away, both thou and this people that's with thee, for the thing is too heavy for thee. Thou art not able to perform it thyself alone. Hearken now unto my voice, I will give thee counsel, and God shall be with thee. Be thou for the people to God, where that thou mayest bring the causes unto God. Thou shalt teach them ordinances and laws, and shalt show them the way wherein they must walk, and the work that they must do. Moreover, thou shalt provide out of all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of fifties, rulers of tens, and let them judge the people at all seasons. And it shall be that every great matter they shall bring unto thee, but every small matter they shall judge. So shall it be easier for thyself, and they shall bear the burden with thee. If thou shalt do this thing and command thee so, then shalt thou be able to endure, and all this people shall also go to their place of peace. So here's my thing. Somebody wants to get super detailed about Acts 13:20 and the 450 years. I would be one of these people who would say, I think the numbers are going to be correct. I think that there's going to be some way where you can possibly get the numbers to work together. But I would be one of those people who would be saying, Israel did in fact always have judges. We just get a 450-year window where we look at an exact set of them. But it was always an office inside the nation of Israel. Now here's another point. In John 10:34, Jesus quotes, he says, is it not written in your law that I said you are gods? A lot of people don't know what to make out of that because he's talking to people about people, and he uses this word. He says, you are gods. And he said, well, I don't know what to make out of that. You go to David says, I have said, ye are gods, and of all your children of the Most High. Well, this is what they're referencing. David, Jesus, look at what they're looking at. They're referencing Exodus 22:28. He says, thou shalt not revile the gods, nor curse the ruler of thy people. Exodus 22:28. So in this text I'm saying, God, through Moses, actually saying that we should not speak against false deities? No, that's not what he's saying. So what is he saying here? He's talking about the judges and the princes over Israel. He's actually, in Exodus 22:28, he's making reference back to the people that would be established from the statement of Exodus 18. Yeah, I would be more inclined to say they've always had judges. Do we get a particular set and a particular insight through the book of Judges? Yes, we do. And that window of time is going to be 450 years. But in this context, they've always had them. Exodus 22:28 is where Jesus is quoting from in John 10:34. It's where David's quoting from in in Psalm 82:6. Exodus 22:28. I think that they were always there, giving judgment to the people. We'll talk about this more as we go on. This is just our introduction material. You look at Exodus 4:16. God says, thou shalt not revile the gods. But look at the relationship with Moses and Aaron in hopes of bringing the people out. He shall be thy spokesman unto the people, and even he shall be to thee instead of a mouth, and thou shalt be to him instead of God. So how's the relationship going? Aaron is the mouthpiece, And he says Aaron basically gets his marching orders from Moses. Moses would be to Aaron, thou shalt be to him instead of God. Well, did Moses just become deity? No. But he is the next thing up. God himself says Moses is where Aaron gets the information from, and Aaron becomes a mouthpiece. Thou shalt be to him instead of God. Look at Exodus 7:1. The Lord said unto Moses, see, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet. This is just simply used as an authoritative position. 22:28, and he says, revile not the gods. John 10:34, Psalm 82:6. He's not talking about, as we say, little g gods, idol gods, anything like that. In that context, it's talking about the appointed rulers. Now, can I just take a moment with you and say why this point even matters? I don't want you to be confused. I don't want you to find these things and somebody basically start wrangling with you and you don't know what to do. I would make this point, and I wanted to make it today just so that we could talk about this in Acts 14:4. Somebody today comes along and they say they are an apostle. You don't necessarily know how to answer that. But while in the meantime, you don't necessarily know how to answer it, and they're pulling wool over everybody's eyes, and people say, well, he is an apostle. And here's how they're going to get away with it. You're going to say, well, you can't be an apostle because Acts chapter 1, the end of Acts chapter 1 says you had to see the resurrected Lord to be considered an apostle, and you had to be chosen by him. Well, then they're going to say this, Acts 14:14. When the apostles, Barnabas and Paul, heard of, they rent their clothes, ran in among the people crying out, and they'll say, well, Barnabas was called an apostle. He's not one of the 12. We don't have any information about him seeing the Lord like Acts 9, Paul does. Well, let's look at this word. We have it here in green. Apostolos just simply means, in a generic sense, one sent. Now, when you're looking at Acts 13, you're going to find Barnabas is chosen and sent out by the church at Antioch. But he's not part of the 12 chosen by Christ. And he doesn't have the qualifications like Paul does from Acts chapter 9. But he is someone who the church sent out, but he's not an apostle of Christ in the same way they are. So why can't we look at the Old Testament and Exodus 18 and say they always had judges, but when we get to the book of Judges, we see a particular set magnified. Yeah, you can be someone sent out by a group of people. That doesn't mean you are an apostle of Christ chosen the way these people were. It doesn't mean that you have seen the resurrected Lord and chosen like Paul in Acts chapter 9. One more for your notes. I am big, y'all. I'm big for over-preparing. Right? You're going to go have a Bible study with somebody, cover all of your bases. You do not want to get in there and not be ready for something. Just one more point. When you look at Mark chapter 1, verses 2 and 4, talking about John the Baptist, as it is written in the prophets, behold, I send my messenger before thy face, which shall prepare thy way before thee. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord, make his path straight. And then it goes on to say, John, XYZ. He's talking about John. Well, he says, I send my messenger, and it's the word, however you want to say it, apostolo, however you want to say it. We don't speak Greek. And that just is a general sense of to send out. But it's of the same idea as we just saw in Acts 14:14. Now here's my question. John is called or said to be sent out. Are you going to call him an apostle the way that the 12 or the way that Paul was? When, number one, the 12 have not even been selected yet, and the Christ has not even been presented yet. See what I'm saying? Context matters in these type of discussions. Somebody says, Acts 13:20, 450 years for the judges. For those judges that are in the book. But if you look at Exodus 18, and you look at Psalm 82:6, and you jump back to Exodus 22:28, in a sense, they always had judges. But we get insight into particular judges. Why are we saying this? I want you to just be up to speed. I don't want anybody to come in, and this is what somebody's going to do. They're going to come in, they're going to flex on you, and then they're going to say, you didn't know that? And you have to say, I didn't know that. And it's not like you can't teach people about the one church and the plan of salvation just because they got you on that. But you would like to avoid it. It's not a good feeling. And sometimes you're going to go through it, but it's not good. It feels awful. I would like to do my part to help you avoid that. Now let's keep looking at this. Example, 1 Corinthians 8. Here's my thing, y'all. We're not going to know. Paul says we don't know as we ought to know, but we're trying. That's what this Bible class is for. We're trying. Here's my point. Educated men, someone's going to say, educated men are arguing about the 300, the 450, and the 480 years, and then someone's going to say, but have they noticed that Judges 17 through chapter 21 actually belong in the front of the book? Listen, y'all. I'll tell you, I think this is going to be the most confusing class that we have, and after this, it's all going to be application. That's what I want us to get out of this book, but I'm trying to get this out of the way just so that you can say we did it, because I'm saying there will be people itching to have this, but I want you to think about this. And I think this is going to help you with your Bible study. Let's look at this. When you look at Judges 18:30, there's going to be someone out there who's going to say, do you know, they're going to say to you, did you know that Judges 17, chapter 17 through chapter 21 should be at the front of the book? They're going to ask you this question. In Judges 18:30, the children of Dan set up the graven image, and Jonathan, the son of Gershom, the son of Manasseh, he and his sons were priests of the tribe of Dan until the day of the captivity of the land. Now here's what someone's going to say. They're going to say here that there is some discussion that this is Moses' grandson, Jonathan, the son of Gershom. And the way they're going to talk to you about this is they're going to say that the spelling, the Hebrew spelling of Moses and the Hebrew spelling of Manasseh just varies in this very, very minute detail. And they're going to say that very well could have been Moses' grandson. Well, here's what somebody's going to say. Judges 18 is beyond Judges 11:26. And Judges 11:26 is where he says it's been at least 300 years since they took Heshbon in Numbers 21. So somebody's going to say, if it is Moses' grandson, how would he be alive 300 years later? And they'll say, that doesn't make sense. And then somebody's going to throw in this idea. They're going to say, you can be called a son of somebody, and it just means a descendant. Like in Matthew 1:1, it says Jesus called the son of Abraham and David. Well, he's not in that sense, right? When we think of son, we think of immediate offspring. Well, he's a descendant of them. So that's what somebody's going to say about Judges 18:30. But now let's look at this. Let's look at Judges 19:5. These are for your notes, y'all. We're not really in the book of Judges yet. I'm getting you ready for the book of Judges. They turned aside thither to go in and to lodge in Gibeah, and when he went in, he sat down in a street of the city, for there was no man that took them into his house to lodging. Now here's what another person's going to say. They're going to say, and this is where you have to double check, y'all, where I said like having the Bible program in case you need to call something out. The whole awful scene where the men of the city of Gibeah come in and they rape this woman. The text might say they force her. Look at what Hosea 10:9 says. They're going to say, Hosea 10:9 calls Gibeah the beginning of Israel's sins. Y'all, that is a direct quote out of a commentary. And this is how they're going to convince somebody that the book of Judges 19 should be at the front of the book. Because they say, Hosea 10:9 says, Gibeah is the beginning of Israel's sins. Let's look at Hosea 10:9. O Israel, thou hast sinned from the days of Gibeah. Now, it doesn't actually say that that's where their sin began. And we know that it's not. They sinned in Numbers 13 and Numbers 14 by not trusting in God, which is where a whole generation had to die wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. I don't think that Hosea 10:9, it doesn't say this is the beginning of their sin. Exodus 32, Moses goes up on the mountain, and while he's gone, the people make a whole golden calf. They get into all kinds of bad activity with that golden calf. This is just a marker. It's just to say, since way back when, y'all been doing this stuff, but it doesn't actually say that it began there. You might be watching this right now, you might be saying, well, Caleb, it kind of sounds like you're arguing against yourself. Judges 17 through 21 should be at the beginning of the book, and so far you've given us reasons as why the argumentation should not be that way. Well, these are fixing to fall into place, and here they are. Here's where I would say. In Judges 18:29, this is where I would say, chapter 17 through 21 should be at the beginning of your book. They called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan their father, who was born unto Israel, howbeit the name of the city was Laish at the first. So here's our question. If Judges 18 is 300 years, right, 300 years into the time frame of them taking Heshbon, 300 years later, how are they naming a city Dan that was named Dan back in Joshua 19:47? And the coast of the children of Dan went out too little for them. Therefore the children of Dan went up to fight against Lashem, and took it, and smote it with the edge of the sword, and possessed it, and dwelt therein, and called Lashem Dan after their father. So how is it they're naming... Now here's the thing too, y'all are going to notice that the spelling of this town is different in Judges 19:47 than it is in Judges 18:29. Well, here's my question. Someone says, well, those towns are different. Here's two questions for you. If Judges 18 is 300 years later, how are they naming a city Dan that has already been named Dan in Joshua 19? And if they already have named a separate city in Joshua 19 Dan, how are they naming another one Dan? Now, someone might say, well, it's like how there's a Bethlehem in Galilee and then there's a Bethlehem in Judah. Okay, but those are going to be actually different tribes. There's going to be a Bethlehem up north, then there's a Bethlehem, Judah, but those are two separate tribes. This says Dan did it both times after their father, Dan. Here's the answer. Judges 18, in fact, is an earlier event that's saved to the end of the book. Now somebody say, Caleb, this is so confusing. It's really not. And you know, I hate to use movie references, but this is just how I know that you understand it. Sometimes y'all, if I talk about a movie and y'all say, what's he know about that movie? I'm telling you, you got to be watching this stuff with a Clear Play or VidAngel, and that's how I know about this stuff. So here's how I know that you get this. Judges 17, chapter 17, through Judges chapter 21 should be the beginning of your book. And you say, well, why isn't it there? Two ways to understand this, that I know y'all can do this and it's not a problem. Okay. Have y'all watched The Godfather? Have you watched part 2 of The Godfather? That movie is continuously going like current, what's happening now, and then all of a sudden you're in a flashback. You come back, flashback, come back, flashbacks, flashbacks all over the place, and you don't have a problem with it that way. And y'all don't have a problem watching Star Wars starting at chapter 4 through 6, and then years later you got chapters 1 through 3. It's just a flashback. That's all that you're getting here. Somebody would look at it, you get Judges chapter 3 to Judges 16, and then 17 through 21 they call it, I'm calling it a flashback. Somebody calls it an appendix. Right? You can understand this. It's not overly difficult. You might be saying, well, Caleb, the way that you presented it was difficult. I'm sorry. I do want to do the best that I can. You go back, you look at the notes. Hopefully this is making sense. One more. How are they naming a city Dan that was already named Dan? And the answer is it's an appendix. It's further information. The discussion that happens in Judges 18 is much more detailed than Joshua 19. Now here's one more. Judges 20. The men who force the woman all night, they kill her. That happens in Gibeah. They say it's a town of Benjamin. And look who is around to give comment to it. Who actually is there and says, this is not good. Look at this. Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, stood before it in those days, saying, shall I yet again go out to battle against the children of Benjamin of my brother, or shall I cease? And the Lord said, go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into thine hand. Now look at this. If it's 300 years later, how is Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, still alive? Because look back at Numbers 25. Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab, and they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods, and the people did eat and bow down to their gods, and Israel joined himself unto Baal Peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. And the Lord said unto Moses, take all the heads of the people and hang them up before the Lord against the sun, that the fierce anger of the Lord may be turned away from all Israel. Moses said unto the judges of Israel, right? We said they've always had judges. You're just getting insight to judges in the book of Judges. He says to the judges of Israel, slay ye every one of his men that were joined unto Baal Peor. Now look at this. 6. Behold, one of the children of Israel came and brought unto his brethren a Midianitish woman in the sight of Moses, and in the sight of all the congregation and the children of Israel, who were weeping before the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, saw it, he rose up from among the congregation, took a javelin in his hand, he went to the man of Israel to the tent, and thrust both of them through, the men of Israel and the woman through her belly. So the plague was stayed in the children of Israel. Judges 20:28. Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, is there giving comment to this horrific crime that just take place. How is that possible if Judges 20 is 300 years later? Judges 17 through Judges 21 is an appendix. It's a flashback. It's from the beginning stages of the book of Judges. Now, we are at our hour. We're fixing to begin the second half of this show, this Bible class. How do you feel about this? I'm saying, y'all, there's so much argumentation out there. There's so many ways, I'm saying, y'all, that people can put spins on numbers and what have you. But I will say this. If you take, now, I think Judges 17:21 is very, very clear. If you say that Judges 17 through 21 belongs at the beginning of the book, then this is your introduction note. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Judges 21:25. Now, rather than reading the book of Judges and saying it's like this progression and it's going to get to the worst extent in chapter 20, 19 and 20, you basically say, no, that was the beginning stage. It was rough. Judges 19 and 20. And that's really where you get your beginning points. And that's going to set the tone for the rest of the book. There's no king in Israel and everybody's doing which is right in his own eyes. Now, I have to continue this conversation and we're going to show you the commentaries I talked about. I'm going to show you one specific commentary and then we're going to move on. The way these conversations go, y'all, I would like for everybody to learn to give each other room, right? You get into these conversations and people are ready to like have these hard, fast, I don't think so, I don't know about that. And it's like disagreement is not a personal offense. When you look at Judges 21:25, it says, in those days there was no king in Israel, and every man did that which was right in his own eyes. And somebody's going to come along and they're going to say, so what? They haven't even had a king yet. Why is that an issue? The wandering, the conquest, now the judges, and it specifically says at the beginning there is no king and everybody does that which was right in their own eyes. You say, well, they haven't even had a king yet anyways. You know, someone could come in with Deuteronomy 33 and they could say, well, Moses commanded us a law, even the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob, and he was a king in Jeshurun. So someone could come in and say, well, they had a king of sorts when the heads of the people and the tribes of Israel were gathered together. Now, this is what the text says. And someone's going to hear me say, and they're going to say, well, I don't know about that. And you're going to say, it's debatable. That's fine. But this is what the text says. If you want to talk about it, that's fine. But that is what the text says. Someone says, that's debatable. Okay, fine. But I will say this about the way that the judges are working. Distance creates occasion. What do you mean? I'm talking about Romans chapter 7. Paul says, occasion for sin. When you read the parable in Luke 15:11 through 13, when does the son, the prodigal son, when does he become involved in his riotous living? When he's at home or when he goes away? He divided unto him his living, and not many days after the younger son gathered all together, took his journey to a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. Okay, how does it go? When do people have potential to get into some of their worst trouble? Young people, we know it's when they go to college. Parents are sending their kids to college, and we say they're kids. These are adults. Y'all might still be treating them like kids, but they are of age, right? They could join the military and go fight for the country if they wanted to, but then they're kids when the parents want to tell them something. You take these young adults and you send them into these atmospheres. Well, no one around here knows them. They start acting in some of these activities, and there's nobody that's going to say, oh, honey, no. They just get the freedom. It's their first taste of freedom. So when you look at the judges, they have spent the last 40 years all wandering around the wilderness together, and now they're becoming situated in their land. It's distance. It's occasion. We're not all together anymore. Someone might say, well, all these different places, if you remember from the book of Joshua with our Bible geography, you're going to say all these different places had their Levite cities, so they still had teaching. I get that, but when you look at where are we? Judges chapter 17, you're going to see how quickly the Levites failed the people. That's when I say people being people, but you're going to see it in Judges chapter 17. The distance creates occasion, and then you're going to have this other note. Judges 21:25, there was no king in Israel, and everybody did that was right in their own eyes. Then someone's going to say, in honesty, they acted just as bad when they had a king. When you look at 2 Samuel 13:11 and 12, Amnon is a child of David, and he rapes his own half-sister Tamar. David and Bathsheba happened before that in 2 Samuel 11:4. He takes another man's wife, has the man killed. His son does this. Let's go to another one. Then you would basically have, after that, you have the whole bit with Absalom trying to steal the kingdom away. It's a note, y'all. It's to show that there was no established authority. People have just gotten into their new places where we say the distance creates a taste of freedom. The Levites failed the people in Judges 17. It's people being people. But I would like to make this point very, very quickly. Judges 21:25 proves the idea of Romans 13. Look at this. In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which right in his own eyes. What's the job of the government? Romans 13:4, the job of the government is to protect the citizens from domestic terror and foreign terror. It is to give out punishment to the criminals. Y'all got the government doing way, way, way too much. I'm talking about all kinds of stuff. Department of Education, all the different things that they got their tentacles in. The idea of government is to punish criminals and protect the law-abiding citizens from domestic terror and foreign terror. Judges 21:25, there was no king in Israel. Everybody's doing right in their own eyes. All kinds of crime going on all over the place. Romans 13:4, he beareth not the sword in vain, for he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Ecclesiastes 8:11, because sentence against the evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. Just about everybody thinks I'll get away with it. I have no problem with the slogan, tough on crime. I have no problem with that. Now, here we go. We're fixing to make a big transition. Of all the timeline that we discussed, y'all, like I said, the charts that I used were not original with me, but of all the ones that I did look at, I thought he did the best job. Now, you might go through and look at my numbers and find some discrepancy. It might just be as simple as I put in the wrong number, typed out the wrong thing. When I went out of my slideshow, that's what I thought I was doing, that I had the wrong number, but in fact I had it correct. You're going to find something. But I want to show you an idea. This commentary set is one of the most respected commentary sets by all people. I'm saying the majority of people who are participating in the collective idea of Bible study. Pulpit commentary. And in volume number 3 of Pulpit Commentary, where they talk about the people of Judges, in their introduction page, do you know what they say? On the introduction page, and they only have like 5 pages worth of introduction, Pulpit Commentary says the point of Judges is not to figure out the timeline. It is to understand the consequences of self-service over service to God. Look, you are, I'm saying, a master and a genius of figuring out timeline in the book of Judges. But you can do that, and you can actually miss the entire point of the book of Judges. Someone says, well, this sounds like, Caleb, you're trying to say, like, we can't figure it out. I think it's possible to figure out. But I also think that it's very true, this statement here, that God in heaven would look at us arguing about the timeline and then him thinking, that's not why y'all had judges. Let's be honest why I think we have judges. Before we do that, let's take our quick commercial. Let's look at this. You're watching What Does the Bible Say on Star News. You're local. You should be telling people that it's on TV. They can tune in. Tell them, get a notepad. Get their Bible out because you want to double check me. Write it all down. Get your notes organized. Get them clean on the pad. and then get them neatly written down in your wide margin King James. I would really encourage you to get a wide margin Bible so you can take notes. Some might say, I have had people say this to me. They say, they do it, man. They fall right into this. I don't know why they do it. They see my Bible and they say, well, Caleb, that Bible is so big. And then they say to me, I wouldn't want to take a Bible like that door knocking. And then I very quickly say, when's the last time you went door knocking? People who don't even door knock. I'm not talking about local brethren, because local brethren door knock. But I've had other people who don't even door knock say, well, I wouldn't want to take something that big out door knocking. Man, I take this thing door knocking. Why? Half of my brain is in here. I remember it as best as I can, but then I have notes that will help me all over this place, and I can clearly see them. I used to. People look at my Bible and say, how can you read that? You wrote it so small. I don't do that anymore, and I don't even need glasses yet. Do it neat. Get it where you can read it. Take it door knocking. You don't want unnecessary fights. What I was going to say is, I take the whole thing. I don't carry a New Testament when I go door knocking, because I've had so many people just jump horses. We're on an important conversation. They say, you don't believe in the Old Testament? I carry the whole thing. I take my wide margin Bible. Half my brain is in there. Tell your friend, tell your cousin Ted over in Wisconsin that what does the Bible... They can watch it. They can be tuned into this discussion with us. You email me at calebgrobertson@gmail.com. We will put you on the Informer email list every Sunday morning. You get a page and a half Bible article in your inbox. We'll scroll down. There's a prayer list on the back. Look, we want to pray for as many people as we can. We have some people here, right here. It says, what does the Bible say? Viewer request. You want us to pray for somebody? We cycle out the prayer list. We'll put your prayer requests on here. We're fine to do that. We want to pray for you any way that we can. Down here, recommended books, book of the month. We want you to be edifying. We're on local television over 50 hours a month, but we're doing all this. I said earlier, we're working overtime because we want you to get your spiritual diet requirement, right? You have to be fed, and we think that we can assist you in some aspect of that. We want you to be getting as much as you can. Now, here's our point. Let's get off of that. Tell people about the bulletin. We can get it to them. What does the Bible say? And if you're local, I want to say this too. If you are local to Martinsville, Danville, the surrounding area, and you go to a man-made sect, but they're not meeting, you already say that any church is as good as the other. The brethren, the Christians in town, are still assembling at 823 Starling Avenue. The doors are open. And in Danville, Christians are still assembling at 120 American Legion Boulevard, right behind Old Dutch off of North Main. We're still assembling and the doors are open. If you come, we're not going to be hitting you up for some type of offering. We want you to get the information for free. We'll probably give you materials if you ask for it on your way out, free. When I talk to a lot of people in town, and they say that they watch the broadcast on Star News, and that's fantastic. And then I ask them, so where are you going to church? And they say, well, I used to go to such and such. And I say, well, what are you doing now? And they say, I don't go anywhere. I just watch you guys. Don't just watch what does the Bible say on Star News and then not assemble on Sunday morning. I wouldn't send you like where you used to go. Somebody said, I used to go to Church of God and Prophecy over at blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't send you back there. But if you're watching this broadcast and you're not assembling anywhere, you need to assemble on the first day of the week. You need to be a Christian. You need to assemble on the first day of the week with your brethren. So I don't encourage just watching the broadcast and not assembling. I would say do both. Because like we said a moment ago, it is all about edification. We want you to get the information that you need so that you can go through this life. Life is hard. And the book of Proverbs would say, the way of the transgressor is even harder. Just something to think about. You can argue about Judges' timeline, but are you trying to keep Judges from happening again? Look, y'all, this is what we should be thinking about. Judges chapter 2, verse number 10, y'all. I'm saying this, I'm going to say it on the front. I don't have children. That does not disqualify me from talking about children. Paul talked about marriage, he wasn't married. Paul talked about children, he didn't have children. But if anything, y'all, you're thinking about raising your kids and you need something to get you in gear. I'm talking about, read with your kids. When you're if you're putting them to bed, read them Hurlbut's story of the Bible. It's Bible stories broken up where you can read through it with your child. Read Hurlbut's story of the Bible. Read the Bible with them. Pray with your kids. Get your kids to understand that following God comes before sport activities. And if nothing that I say gets you in gear, I think that Judges 2:10 would hopefully get some parents out there to really, get a grip on working with your kids. It says in Judges 2:10, the first generation who comes into the land, right? Joshua brings the Israelites into the land of Canaan, and look what Judges 2:10 says. All that generation were gathered in their fathers, and there arose another generation after them, which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. A generation and here's what I say, Dad said this yesterday, every generation thinks that the next generation is a mess. It always happens that way. But in this situation, it's really bad. The next generation does not know the Lord. So I have to say this to y'all. Taking your child to Sunday morning Bible class is not enough to sustain them if the rest of the days of the week are not lived like a Christian lifestyle. And this is what I mean. You can take your kids, don't get ahead of me now. Somebody says, well, here we go, I'm about to fast forward. You can take your kid to Sunday morning Bible study, and if y'all are just watching filthy movies with no filter throughout the rest of the week, your kids will grow up. They will recognize that. Kids, you say, these kids, they got the mind of a sponge. And you don't believe it when you live in front of them. They will soak up all your activities. And I'm saying, y'all, I used to tell stories when I was a kid. I'd hang around all these other little boys. These were not in the local area. But we would travel, and I'd be around these little kids. I saw this one little boy, this is all in the church building. We're traveling, and kids are playing. This kid kicked the other one right in the shin, spit on him, and then just started cussing him out. Then I was like, what in the world is going on? And I told an adult, hey, this is going on in this back hallway. And when I told that story to my parents, right, I go home and I tell my parents about it immediately. Where did he hear that, right? Because I don't think he was in public school yet. You put them in public school, that's where they're going to hear it. But if they're not in school yet and they're talking like that, they probably got it from mama or from daddy. We've had kids who did come to Bible class, and at home, man, their parents would cuss a storm, and little kids coming to Bible class, cussing up a storm. I know it. Somebody might be saying, you're patting yourself on the back and you're saying, we're doing a good job with my kids. I'm telling you, the Bible says it is that easy. Can I say this too? It is a very, very big thing that kids get taken to Bible class, and they do it for years. And in those years of them going to Bible class, when they become of age, I'm talking about they are adults now, do you know what they say? They say, we have heard this be said, but it was never really proven to us concrete. The way, I'm saying, of obeying the gospel that does involve water baptism, and the idea that there's only one church. They have not had those things proven to them. They have not had the idea about I would think, pretty basic argumentation against atheists. They don't know the arguments that skeptics would use. They have not been trained to be put out into the real world. And when the real world hits them, Judges 2:10 becomes a very, very big reality. There are people out there, they're doing a fantastic job raising their kids. I say, hey, good job. I'm nobody, but I'm saying God bless you. I think people are invested in their children. They're the next generation for the church. I appreciate people who are trying with their kids, because my kids are going to have to be around y'all's kids. But I'm just making a point here. how much time are you spending on the timeline of Judges, and how much time are you spending to say we cannot recreate the book of Judges? And what it really means is, are you stopping the corruption of the next generation? Somebody says, can you believe Judges 18:30? Can you believe that Moses' grandson could be involved in this? Yes, I do. That's not an issue at all. Almost all of David's children were wicked. Eli's sons were wicked. Samuel's sons are wicked. I say it, I'm not trying to give a pass, but it happens this way. It's people being people. People make mistakes. And I'm saying this, just because your granddad is somebody doesn't mean that by virtue it's passed on to you. Atmosphere changes, people change. I'm not saying it's good, but it happens. What are you doing to stop the corruption of the next generation? Now, y'all, let's make a moment here, and let's talk about some books. This is a biography, and it is called The Christian Scholar, the biography of Hall Lowry Calhoun. This man was one of the first individuals, and I would say in his time, to get a PhD and teach in what would be called brotherhood schools. But y'all, I'm saying, if you read this book, and let me tell you this, when you read this book, he's really not the hero. I recommend this book just so that you can see how history played out and how you can see the players on the inside of this book. Now, what I'm about to show you, I have to Google another book. Okay. Okay. Now, I would recommend that you read these two books together or one right after the other. The Christian Scholar, and then the other biography is The Eyes of Jehovah, James Alexander Harding. They're operating in the same time frame. They're looking at the same difficulties, and y'all, when they had the problems in the early 1900s, late 1800s, the schools did not fix anything. The schools were one of the biggest problems. It was men, I'm saying Harding was opposing instrumental music, and he was talking to small country congregations. They were doing the job. The schools were not really doing that much, and this man was certainly not helping the cause versus against instrumental music. Read the book, y'all. How many pages is it? Okay, I'm not going to count the epilogue. It's 210 pages. You can knock this book out. You can find it on Amazon, The Christian Scholar. And here's what I'm saying, y'all. If you look at the time frame where he was in, there was all kinds of people in these religious schools who did not believe the authenticity of the Bible. They didn't believe the Bible was inspired. And J.W. McGarvey, who was his teacher, was having to combat those people, and they're all in amongst the schools. Here's the thing, y'all. I wish that I could just recommend a school, but I can't. And I'm saying, as far as history goes, I love the idea of it, y'all. I love the idea of getting to have young adults go to a Christian atmosphere, and they get to be comfortable and they get to grow. But here's the thing, y'all. If you're sending them to Abilene in Texas, you're sending them to Abilene Christian University, they'll be the minority. They got all kinds of sectarian folk up in Abilene. They will be the minority. There's just no point sending them to Abilene. That's not the only reason why, but here's my thing, y'all. You read this book, The Christian Scholar, Hall Lowry Calhoun. This man had a PhD, and he thought for the piano, he thought he had this fantastic argument, and it was so bad, it was so pitiful. And this PhD said, I got an unanswerable argument. Y'all, you're putting way too much stock into these, quote, Christian colleges. Whether it's Freed-Hardeman, I wouldn't send a kid to Freed-Hardeman. Young adult, they're not kids. I wouldn't send them to Pepperdine. I wouldn't send them to Harding. I wouldn't send them to Abilene. Somebody says, well, couldn't they go there and not like get their Bible ideas? If you're going to do that, I would say you could probably find just another good school. You're going to send them in there thinking this is going to be like a safe Christian atmosphere, and it's not. My family friend, let me see how all this goes. My family friend was showing people around ACU, however many years ago, and he was showing people to all the dorms and whatnot, walked in on people smoking pot. You might say, well, that's just those people. Okay. My aunt went to Abilene, had a roommate, she drank. And my grandparents were coming to see my aunt while she was in Abilene, and my aunt says, I don't think my aunt drank with her, but my aunt tells this girl, she says, you cannot have this stuff in the room when my parents get here. They will have a cow. She should have just told my grandparents and been like, this place is not at all what y'all think it is. So what my aunt does is she just takes all the booze and she hides it from that girl. The girl wasn't worried about it. She just takes it and puts it somewhere. She should have just poured it all out. All this stuff, y'all, happens at all these places. Harding, however many years ago, had the HU Queer Press. I don't know if it's still running, but it's like this part of the student body that's dedicated to defending homosexuality. The schools aren't helping anything. And you know what? You might be saying, well, Caleb, these schools aren't helping anything, but the preaching schools are going to help us. No, the preaching schools are in bed with all these schools. You do 2 years at a preaching school, you transfer over to Freed-Hardeman, you finish your bachelor's of arts in theology or whatever it would be. You can do it to Freed, and I'm sure you can do it to any of these other schools. They are all intertwined, and y'all, it is a money machine. That is just what they have become. They are getting so much money in from so many different people, they can't possibly take a stand because it would upset so many people. Everything they do is always behind closed doors, and it's a money machine. You don't believe me? Here's history. Here's history documentation in front of you. Let me show you one more. I'm talking about your children who are not kids anymore. They are young adults, and you're putting them in an atmosphere where you say, this is a good Christian atmosphere, and there's all kinds of stuff going on over there. The least you could do is give them a heads up and say, it's going to be rough. Here's another one you should read. I've shown this before. This is Ira Rice's paper that he did starting in 1970, and it went for like at least 20 years. If you want a set of these, all you have to do, there's a lot of them, I can tell you who to get it from, and the deal that they have worked out is they will give it to you for free. The only thing you have to do is pay the shipping cost, because it is a lot of books. If you read Ira Rice's Contending for the Faith, you will see the historical document of what all the schools have been doing for years. Early 1900s, the schools did not help a thing as far as instrumental music goes. They had all kinds of struggle going on the inside, whether or not people even believe the Bible was inspired. And y'all just keep sending your kids there, and y'all, we don't get any type of return of investment. People think preachers are coming out of Freed-Hardeman. Y'all ain't getting preachers out of Freed-Hardeman. I called Freed-Hardeman. And I said, if I was going to be like a Bible major, not taking like, everybody's got to take New Testament classes over at Freed. I said, but if I was going to be like a serious Bible major, what would the teacher to student ratio be? He said 1 to 5. They're not cranking out preachers, but they're taking in church money, and you're not getting any type of return of investment. This is another book. Bert Thompson wrote this book, Is Genesis Myth? He had to write this in response to Abilene Christian University, who were teaching theological evolution, and they were dismissing the first, possibly even 11 chapters of Genesis. Creation account is just Hebrew poetry. Bert Thompson, I'm saying, thank you, Bert Thompson, for writing that book, taking on the cause. Thankful for people like Ira Rice who are documenting the changes. And you got to be aware of those things. If you don't know history, you are bound to repeat history. And Judges chapter 2, verse number 10 says it's a generational way. Somebody says, it sounds like you're like always uncomfortable. And you're always saying like we're just an inch away from slipping. Hello? I do believe, let's look at this. He says in Ephesians, let's look at one more before we get here. He says this, Ephesians 5:15. They say, Caleb, you sound like we're like always on the verge. Paul says, walk circumspectly not as fools, but as wise. What does he say? Always be on the lookout. And I'm saying, y'all send y'all's kids, young adults to these schools, and you are not circumspect at all. You don't question the faculty. Man, Abilene Christian had a whole woman preacher on the faculty. What else do they need to do? Can't think of her first name, but her last name is McLaughlin. An established woman preacher on the Bible faculty at ACU. Ain't no uproar about it. Y'all just keep on sending them. Someone says, well, I don't know anything about Pepperdine. If you would just read a couple of these are not overly thick. The typeset is large enough to where you can be really cranking out some study time, and Ira Rice will tell you about Pepperdine. And here's where I know some people are going to get upset. Y'all are not doing anything with Lads to Leaders. And I will tell you this. I said one time before, about Lads to Leaders, song leading competitions. Song leaders are very important. If you're having a tent meeting, and you're going to have a song of encouragement after the lesson, and John Shannon always sings Why Not Tonight, get somebody who is the best song leader. Because you're using that, the songs are for thought provocation, right? To provoke thought. And you get somebody up there, you say, well, we figure we let Ted have a go. Ted can practice another time. Now, I don't want to say that song leaders are not important, but I'm saying if you're sending your kids and they're doing song leader competition and you think that's how you build up the workforce of the next generation, you are wrong. I am for Bible Bowl. I like the idea of trying to memorize verses. I like looking at flashcards for Bible trivia. I like that. But I'm telling y'all, that is just theory, right? You can have somebody who basically studies medical books all their life and they never actually make a cut on anybody. That's what y'all are doing. So here's what I say to that. Everything that you do is just in theory and in practice. Somebody says, well, Caleb, what do you want to do? And I will say this. I had a man call me. I don't know where he was from. He's somebody who's like in the Sunset, right, Texas, Sunset School crowd. He said, Caleb, I heard you knocking Lads to Leaders. He said, but do you have anything to replace it with for the young people? I said, yes, I do. I said, you send me a group of your young people, and the third Monday of June for 2 weeks, I said, I'll take them door knocking every day. And that man, who really did not like what I had to say, he said, well, Caleb, you do have something to replace it with. I'll give you that. He said, you answered me. Thank you. Take your young people door knocking. There are preachers out there, y'all. They take young people door knocking. I am saying, God bless you. And you might be saying, well, who are you, Caleb? I know I'm nobody, but I'm saying I can give a thumbs up to somebody as I'm giving this a thumbs down. Lads to Leaders. It's a joke. If you want to get a PDF of the little booklet that Mark Mosier wrote at about 2001, where he says he's not supportive of Lads to Leaders. That's Keith Mosier from Memphis School of Preaching's son. They're not supportive of Lads to Leaders. I will email you that booklet. You email me at calebgrobertson@gmail.com. We'll get that for you. This is just y'all, we're fixing to be moving. But I had to make these points with y'all. The next generation, Ephesians 5:15, he said, walk circumspectly. Y'all got to figure out this stuff, man. A bunch of people have basically seen it. Wes McAdams teaching at ACU, Abilene Christian. He did not say anything that had like any type of hook to it. I talked with Wes and I asked him about going to Abilene as a mission field. Well, he didn't say anything about anything when he got there. I remember what he said. He said, the Bible is a story, and you all are living out your story. You're living out your story at Abilene Christian. Oh, he didn't do anything for anybody. Now, here's my next point. Do y'all remember Kevin Pendergrass? I love Kevin. I love Wes. I don't know Wes. I know Kevin. I love Kevin. I disagree with Kevin on all kinds of stuff. But here's my thing. A bunch of people threw Kevin under the bus. But y'all keep holding on to Wes McAdams, and I'm telling y'all, Wes McAdams is right there with Kevin Pendergrass. Kevin Pendergrass has a podcast, November 19th, 2020. He says, today we are joined by Wes McAdams, host and blogger of Radical Christian. That's a misleading name. This episode continues our exploration of different perspectives. Here's my thing. You say, and I've heard y'all say, young man, he's a sound young man. And in his sermon, he's quoting Wes McAdams. Nope. Nope, you're not getting good material from Wes McAdams. You're getting confusion, and you're getting like forms of agnosticism. Not that you don't believe in God at all, but you're getting the stuff about, well, I don't know if we can really come down on a solid conclusion. You keep using Wes. You wouldn't dare use Kevin, but Wes is with Kevin. And I'm saying all the while, Wes has got y'all. The sooner y'all wake up to that, the better off you will be. It will be more beneficial for your young people. And I'm saying this too, y'all. It's just a whole bunch of parading to each other. You go to Abilene. You go to Affirming the Faith. You go over here. You go over there. It's always the same crowd. Y'all are not reaching lost people. You're just talking about each other with each other. You might be saying, Caleb, what are you doing right now? I will be on live television tomorrow night talking to lost people. In and around the community, talking to lost people. What's Monday had a newspaper article that I wrote in the newspaper. I'm talking to lost people. I'm talking to people who can't stand me. And they're having to see the thoughts put out in print, go out of the airwaves that they cannot answer and their preacher won't answer. But this is what they're doing. I'm talking about the next generation, man. Judges 2:10. Now, here we go. We have just 30 minutes left, 25 minutes. I want to close out this way with you. If we're gonna study the book of Judges, and we got the timeline hopefully settled in your mind. Judges 17 through 21 is an appendix. I think that you can work out the numberings of 300 years, Judges 11, 450 years, Acts 13:20, and then the years in 1 Kings 6:1. I think that you can organize those. But here's the thing. You can do that and still not know the book of Judges, and this is what I want to talk to you about now. Ted comes along, Ted's in the Bible study, and we're going to introduce the book of Judges. And Ted says the book of Judges is one of the darkest, most sinful periods of Israel's history. Here is what I would like for us to do in our Bible study. I would like for us to recognize what is labeled as sin, right? So that we can avoid it, because sinful activities are going to hurt us. It's going to hurt somebody else. That's why I would like to avoid it. You can't be good to your neighbor and be doing these things. But as we study the people in the Bible, I would like for us, it says there's no king in Israel. They all did that was right in their own eyes. I would like for us to look at it a different way. Yes, there are sinful things that are going to happen in this book. You're going to see some awful things in this book. But I would like to reframe the way we look at it. I think that this should be one of your memory verses just as well as any New Testament passage. Exodus 29:39. The one lamb thou shalt offer in the morning, and the other lamb thou shalt offer at even. What do you get out of the idea that God told the priests, offer these sacrifices once in the morning and once in the evening for the people? And then you also have a weekly sacrifice, and you have a monthly sacrifice, and then you have an annual sacrifice, and they are for sin. So I've asked this question before. What do you get out of the fact that God commanded a morning sacrifice and an evening sacrifice? And this is one way to look at it. You say, what do you get out of that? And someone says, you basically see how sinful men can be. And that is true. But I would much rather reframe it and say, if you are seeing that, you're seeing the mistakes, the sins that men commit, but you're seeing God put it into place where He said, in the morning and in the evening, I want you to take care of these people. You basically see the abounding grace of God. And I would like for us to study the book of Judges that way. So let's do this. Someone says the book of Judges was the worst time ever in Israel's history. And I'm saying, based on information that you know from the New Testament, if you really are going to mark it down and say that the book of Judges was one of the most sinful times in Israel's history, then what are you actually saying? Romans 5:20. Moreover, the law entered that offense might abound, but where sin abounded, grace did much more abound. Now, here's your options, y'all. You can look in the book of Judges. I laugh, but this is serious, and I'm going to tell you why I laugh. You have the option of looking at the book of Judges and saying 100% of the people who lived in that time frame are just going to hell. There was no king in Israel, and everybody did that was right in his own eyes. Were things very bad? Yes. That doesn't mean that everybody was involved in it. But here's the second thing. What are you looking for? Are you looking for, someone might say, well, we weren't doing what they were doing. I mean, like Judges 19, we weren't involved in that. That was just, who could do that? But there are people they're committing their own sins over here. It doesn't look as bad as Judges 19, but people in the time frame of Judges were committing sin. So here's what you have. You basically have Romans 5:20 that says, where sin abounds, grace did much more abound, or you have everybody going to hell. Now here's why I kind of chuckle. Number one, the Bible teaches God's grace, so you got to do something with it. You're going to have to figure out how this works. But number two, I don't think it's a realistic option that in a scenario where 100% of the population goes to hell. And if you have a 100% population going to hell, that means to me that you are requiring absolute sinless perfection. But people do think that, and this is how I know that. I had someone ask me, the 70 years in Babylonian captivity, it's a question. I'm not saying anything about them. I'm just saying it's a question that gets asked. They asked me, did anybody in that time frame go to heaven? And I said back to them, I said, so you are asking me, did 100% of that population go to hell? And he said, did they? No. Look at Habakkuk 2:15. Not Habakkuk 2:15. Give me one moment. Habakkuk 2:4. The just shall live by faith. And this is getting the people ready for their 70-year captivity. So if you basically have 100% of the population dying and going to hell, then this passage meant absolutely nothing while they're going in. I think, y'all, that we should read the book of Judges, and we have to realize it is a dark time. But we get to see a moment where we get to say, God is a very gracious God. Now look at this, y'all. Somebody's going to say back to me, I am giving the people, and it's not like you say, okay, it was not yours to give. In the conversation, I'm the one giving these folk grace. Now somebody's going to come back to me and they're going to say, well, Caleb, they got the Romans chapter 9 type of grace. For the children being not yet born, neither having done any good or evil, that the purpose of God according to election might stand, not of works, but of him that calleth. It was said unto her, the elder shall serve the younger, as it is written, Jacob have I loved, and Esau have I hated. Let me stop here. Let me go out of this. Go to the YouTube channel. You go to the playlists, and you go to Calvinism, Reformed Doctrine. You will hear me give lessons on Romans chapter 9. God can use a set of people. That does not mean God has to save them just because he used them. Right? You look at Romans 9 here, verse number 12. The elder shall serve the younger, as it is written, Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. That passage is not in Genesis. That passage is in the book of Malachi. It is not talking about the individual sons. It is talking about the nations that they flourished into. Israel, and Esau is Edom. When he says the younger shall serve, how does it say it here? Having done either good or evil, it was said the elder shall serve the younger. Esau as an individual did not serve Jacob. They both were very well established by the time that they became grown men on their own. But as far as nations go, then yes, you will have Israel prevailing over Edom. Someone's going to say, well, Caleb, I don't know that they, you're saying where sin abounds, grace did much more abound. For the case of the judges, you say, I think it was more of an instance of where God used them rather than God saved them. And I am saying, no, judges got the more than God used them grace. They got the God is saving them grace. And I prove that by Hebrews 11:32 and 34. What shall I more say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon, of Barak, and of Samson and Japheth, of David also, Samuel, and the prophets, Now, here's the new question. Somebody says, okay, Caleb, you have shown us where a handful of judges are listed as, good, faithful men. And I'm saying it's not just someone says, well, they're just in there because they did the Lord's work. It's not the idea they're going to be saved. Yes, they are. Hebrews 11:39 and 40 says, these all, having obtained a good report through faith, receive not the promise, God having provided some better thing for us, that they, without us, should not be made perfect. Now, Hebrews 10 says we are made perfect through the sacrifice of Christ, but Hebrews 11:39 and 40 says we're not going to be perfected without them being perfected. These individuals receive God's grace. And it's not limited to the idea of God used them. It doesn't have to save them. The text says they had faith and they got a good report. And it says that they, without us, should not be made perfect. Now, I don't think that I'm saying, I would like for us to reframe our Bible so you say, we see it and it shows the sinfulness of man. Well, I would rather us study it and say it shows the graciousness of God. And I would like for us to be realistic on this now. When you read Book of Judges, and Ted over here says it's the worst, most sinful time in Israel. Okay, in Exodus 32, they had idolatry that involved fornication. That's like someone says, hey, Aaron, would you make us a golden calf? And then somebody says, is he going to do it? He's making us a calf? Okay, everybody take your clothes off. When the text says that they came down from the mountain and the people rose up to play, there is fornication here. Numbers 25. Y'all are like on the verge and the brink of going into the promised land. And we just read Numbers 25 a moment ago. And they go out with the Moabites and they start offering and participating in idolatry. You read the book of Kings and Chronicles, you're going to find where kings are going to start offering up the children to false gods. You're going to find all manner of activity in there. I just don't think that we can say they were any worse than anybody else. I know that the text says there's no king and everybody did that which was right in their own eyes. I don't know that you can just come along and say they're worse than anybody else, but I would like for us to think about this. You read about these people in the Bible and good night. We act like Colossians 3:5 is not in the text. Look at what Colossians 3:5 says. Mortify therefore your members which are upon the earth, fornication, uncleanness, inordinate affection, evil concupiscence, covetousness, which is idolatry. Y'all, we would never take metal and make something and call it God. We would never carve out wood. You and I would never carve out wood and say God. We made something and then say that thing made me. We would never do that. But in Colossians 3:5, it says covetousness, which is idolatry. Y'all, we have our own idols and we just don't want to look at it. We don't want to own up to is what it is. And what does it look like? Social status, having to have so many dollars, having to drive such a car, live in such amount of square feet house, and then I'm saying this, y'all, people live vicariously through their children. You know, like you grew up and you wanted to be some athlete all-star and you didn't do it, and now you want your kid to do it, and they're probably not going to do it, so now both of y'all are going to feel unfulfilled. The idolatry is all over the place. Institutions, right? I'm saying a lot of these schools haven't done anything except basically create fervency and faithfulness to the alma mater more than the Lord. I don't think that those people are any worse than anybody else. And I think that when we look at these people in the Bible, the rule applies to them. And here's what I'm saying, Matthew 7. He says, judge not that ye be not judged. For with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged. And with what measure you mete, it shall be measured unto you again. I don't want to be hard on these people inside the text any more than my neighbor who is alive today. If I be overly hard on these people, that's my judgment against them. And God says, I'll be judged just as harshly. Not condoning anything that they did that was sinful. But I'm saying, y'all, you can't just look at that and then allow it to define their entire existence. We still have our idols just as much today. Colossians 3:5. We need to work on that. Your idol might look different than other people's, but you got to figure out what yours is. I got to figure out what mine is. If we have one, we need to get it out of the way. You might honestly be living without one, and I'm saying, seriously, good for you. I'm glad. This does not mean that God was not seeking repentance, right? Don't misunderstand me. When I say people being people, all I'm saying by that is don't be shocked. Like something happens and you say, I cannot believe this. Yeah, I believe it. This stuff happens. So you might say, hey, this stuff happens. I wish it didn't, but we gotta start moving forward now, right? A lot of people, they just, withdraw. You got to withdraw fellowship with somebody in the church. Y'all just want to cry about it. This is what the Bible says to do. And at the end of the day, it's God's wisdom and God's judgment, so it's going to be the best option. Hebrews 12, 6 and 7. For whom the Lord loveth, he chasteneth, and scourgeth every son whom he receives. If ye endure chastening, God deals with you as with sons. For what son is he whom the Father chasteneth not? Now let's look at this. Judges 3:9, 3:15, 4:3, 6:6, 10:10. The children of Israel cried unto the Lord, and the Lord raised up a deliverer to the children of Israel. That is God's grace that these people can abandon God. And like Hebrews 12, it says he chasteneth. They become oppressed. They cry out to God. He delivers them. When you get to Judges chapter 10, they're going to cry out to God, and God is actually going to say back, why don't you ask your idols to get you out of this situation? And the people say, we're going to give up our idols, and we're going to follow you by yourself. And then God sends them a deliverer. Does he expect repentance? Yes, he does. But y'all, if you look at Judges, the thing that you should be seeing is this idea. If you are somebody who has, I'm saying, particular sin, you're not going to be guilty of everything, right? But you have this thing that you struggle with, and it frustrates you, then you should read the book of Judges, and you should see just repeatedly these people do the exact same thing over and over and over, and then the Lord comes in and he has mercy on them. Romans 7:15 through 18. You're somebody who struggles with something in particular, and you get frustrated with yourself. For that which I do, I allow not. For what I would, that do I not. But what I hate, that do I. If then I do that which I would not, I consent that the law, it is good. Now there is no more I that do it, but sin that dwells in me. For I know that in me, that is in my flesh, dwells no good thing. For the will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good, I find not. So you're frustrated with yourself, and that's your conscience doing its job. Right? You don't want to shut your conscience down. You want it, he says, for that which I do, I allow not. For what I would, that do I not. The good things that you know you ought to be doing, you don't always do them. The things that you ought to refrain from, you don't always refrain from them. And you get frustrated. You don't want to turn that off. That's your conscience, and it's doing its job. But y'all, while you are an individual, and your conscience is working at you, and here's the thing too, y'all, there are a lot of people out there who they are involved in sin, and they won't actually say that it's sin. They argue with God. When Paul says here, he says, I do the thing that I hate. If then I do that which I would not, I consent the law is good. Isn't that's something that we have a hard time wrapping our heads around? We do it and we hate it. Why? Because we know it's the wrong thing to do. Do you not get, I'm saying, somebody don't want to give you nothing. I want to give you something. And I think Paul does too. You do it and you hate it, and your conscience is eating at you. Do you not get credit for actually attesting that the statement of the law is the better option, when there are loads of people out here who do not even give credence to the law? I think you ought to get something for that. And somebody who says, well, Caleb, you're talking about this business about get something as if it's on your own credit. I know it's not on my credit, but here I am living life, and I've got to figure something out or I'm going to drive myself crazy. And that's you. And here's what it is, y'all. I think that in Romans chapter 7, he goes through the struggle of every person, whether they're Jew, Gentile, inside the law of Moses, outside the law of Moses. It's anybody who studies the truth and knows they have a certain problem, their conscience works at them. And he gives you Romans chapter 8. If you're in Christ, he says there's no condemnation to those who are in Christ. But let's look at this, y'all. Do you think that God gets tired of hear you pray about the same thing? 1 John 1:9 says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Now you might say, Caleb, I believe that passage. But I think that God gets tired of me praying about that same thing. I don't think that he's getting any more tired of you than he got tired of these people during the time frame of the judges. Does he expect us to try? He expects us to try. Romans 7, we got a war against our own selves. But y'all, he knows you are not going to reach on your own merit absolute perfection. He wants to be merciful to you. That's what you should be getting out of the book of Judges. Don't go into the book of Judges just saying, we're about to see the most wicked, vile people that ever lived. You are about to see the grace of God be presented. That these people could do the things that they do, and God does not just discount them on their own. Now, let's say it this way, too. The things that go on in the book of Judges. Are you doing the things that are going on in the book of Judges? You might say sometimes, but there's some things I'm not doing them. God was gracious to them. Do you think that God can be gracious to you? I think that God wants to be gracious to us. There are some people who do not allow for it, but I think it's there. Judges 3:8-9, when the children of Israel cried unto the Lord raised up a deliverer to the children of Israel. That is, that's exactly like Exodus chapter 2, verse number 23. Let's look at this. Came to pass, the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage, and they cried, and their cry came up unto God by reason of the bondage. They cried out to God in Exodus 2:23, He heard them. They cried in Judges 3:8 and in other chapters, and God hears them. I think that God, as a parent, has just as much, troublesome feeling as a physical parent seeing their child go through pain. They shot me with some medicine over in the islands. It was awful, man. It was so painful, and I'm rocking back and forth on the bed crying, and the nurse was saying to me, she said, don't cry, you make mama cry. And mom was crying. I think that's God. I don't think that God likes to see people in hardship. And if people are really making a dedication to follow Him, then I think He will deliver them out of these things. And that's what you ought to be getting out of the book of Judges. Matthew 18, does God not live by the principle that He puts on us? Peter says, Lord, how oft shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Till 7 times? Jesus said, I say unto thee, not until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. And we know that Jesus didn't mean like a literal cutoff point of 490. You keep on forgiving them. Well, does God operate in the standard that He puts on us? I believe that He does, and more so. I want to close with this thought. Do you know what this doesn't mean? We get to come in here, and I want you to feel comfortable about God's grace. Grace does not mean we just cancel out the fight, y'all. Should we abide lawlessness for union's sake? You can have a union and not be unified. Should we abide lawlessness for union's sake? No. You're going to have to fight against things that are wicked. You're going to have to fight against unscripturalness. When these people, men of Gibeah, city of Benjamin, I and my concubine, the men of Gibeah, rose against me and beset the house round about me at night, and though they have not slain me, and thought to have slain me, and my concubine have they forced, and she's dead. Well, we're not going to go fight against Israel because they're part of Israel. We're just going to abide lawlessness for the sake of union. Nope. That's not how this works. Judges chapter 20, as we close, Judges 20 actually presents what Joshua 22 almost was. You have the 3 tribes, 2.5 tribes go beyond Jordan, and they make that monument Ed, and the rest of the tribes on the other side, they hear about it, and they are ready to do battle because they think they're changing the whole religion. And they say, we are willing to go to war with these people. Judges chapter 20, that's in fact exactly what happened against the people of Benjamin. So that all that which fell the day of Benjamin were 20 and 5,000 men that drew the sword. All these were men of valor. I can teach grace and appreciate grace. That does not then mean I don't have to be a part of the fight. And there is a war happening in 2021. It's happening in the church. It's happening outside of the church. And here's the thing, y'all. There's only 2 sides, and it does not allow for fence riders. He that is not with me is against me. He that gathereth not with me scattereth abroad. If you're not really fighting against evil, you're helping evil. We're going to see that in Judges, but we're also going to see grace inside the book of Judges. My name is Caleb Robertson. Be with us tonight at 9 o'clock for more What Does the Bible Say? Tomorrow night at 8 p.m. for more What Does the Bible Say? Phone number is 276-806-3641. My email is calebgrobertson@gmail.com. Tell folk about the YouTube channel, What Does the Bible Say? And email me so we can get you on the Informer every Sunday. Have a good rest of the day. We'll see y'all later tonight. God bless you.
You can get on YouTube and just type in